Continuing our conversation here on News Talk with Noah Frank. He's digital sports editor for WTOP.com. Talking before the news conference started about Washington's improbable come-from-behind win, as you mentioned at the outset, not just a big comeback, statistically the biggest comeback ever for a Washington franchise that dates back to close to the beginning of the NFL. So to fall behind 24-0 is at home to a bad team is sort of mind-boggling, but to come back the way the team did. How much? Now they go into the bye week, which is a chance to get healthy. The good feeling, presumably from this victory, will be with them a while. They've got a stiff test coming out of the bye week. What impact can this have in a division that is still in play?
Yeah, I mean, they, like you said, they get to 3-4. They get to not necessarily a great record, but within the context of Dallas being basically completely directionless without Tony Romo right now, the Eagles missing opportunities to win games, and the Giants just kind of plodding along. The division still seems open, but when you look at the schedule, I mean, we'll know if there's any real chance for optimism coming after the bye week. You go at New England, at undefeated New England. I don't care if you have 2 weeks to prepare. That's an awfully tough test.
I hear they're good.
Yeah, well, and the biggest thing for them was they played the Jets this weekend, who completely shut down their running game. And they still beat them because they just still beat them. They were forced to be one-dimensional and still went out and won. Following that, you got the Saints, who a couple weeks into the season looked like maybe an easy win. The Saints have completely turned their season around. They went in and really beat up Indianapolis yesterday. On the road, the final score wasn't really reflective because they were up so big. It became sort of a garbage time situation. But the Saints look a lot better than they did in the earlier weeks. And then they have to go on the road at currently undefeated Carolina, who just kind of put the clamps on Philly last night. And so I mean, you look at the next 3 games and it's hard to find wins there. I mean, home against New Orleans is going to be another must-win type of situation.
Does Jay Gruden spend any time thinking about how they were so flat? I mean, he very famously declared the code red, which a lot of people didn't know what it meant, and so a week was spent on Sports Talk Radio dissecting that code red. I'm guessing he regrets having said that, but does he spend any time thinking about why they were so bad in the first half?
Yeah, I mean, it's troubling. I mean, they've been more, the issues have been more coming out of the locker room in the second half up until yesterday, throughout the season so far, is that they didn't appear to make good halftime adjustments, which at least they did this time. I mean, they executed the first successful onside kick all season in the NFL. That surprise onside kick, that was a key to them winning, the defense was good when it needed to be at the goal line. It was, they got contributions from all ends of the game, but it didn't really seem to show up for the first 30 minutes.
The bye week comes at a good time because it'll give folks a chance to get healthy.
Yeah, obviously Ryan Kerrigan breaking his hand is huge. How it's easier on defense to get through an injury like that. They can find ways around. I mean, it's not like a quarterback or a wide receiver breaking his hand. But yeah, I mean, they're beat up right now, and we'll see coming out of the bye week. Do you get a guy like Deshaun Jackson back in the mix? That completely changes the offense, opens things up that haven't been there all season. So yeah, what that team looks like, which is purely speculative at this point. I mean, when you see who is going to be available going into New England, I'm sure that's going to make a huge difference.
The running game has been hurt by not so much the lack of a passing game, because Kirk Cousins has put up decent numbers, but it's a lot of short passes, so defenses don't have a lot of reason to stay honest. Like you said, if they get Deshaun Jackson back, hopefully some of that changes. But it feels like the running game, and of course the offensive line has had injuries too, but it feels like the running game is dealing with issues beyond the lack of a deep threat.
Yeah, well, they kind of came out with these heavy sets and these multiple tight ends and this big kind of crushing, like Jim Harbaugh Stanford style, rushing game to start the season, and they were really dominating for a couple weeks, and then the league, as it always does, looks at a lot of tape and adjusts, and like you mentioned, can pull the linebackers and the safeties up if there's no deep threat, and it just becomes a numbers game. How many guys do we have blocking, and how many guys do they have that you have to have an assignment for?
And do we have our best guys blocking?
Yeah, but I mean the pure numbers of it is just if they were used to playing 7 in the box, and now it's 8, and maybe now it's 9, depending on what the formation looks like, you're just not going to be successful. You've got guys who are decent running backs, but they're not transcendent. I can get through 2 or 3 tackles and even if we don't have the numbers, still be successful. So again, that's where the deep threats are going to have to become a part of. They're going to have to offset so that you get guys off the line of scrimmage defensively. You do open up more holes for the running game.
There's been so much criticism of the team's special teams play to get an onside kick and to get a deep kickoff into the wind when you needed it. Maybe we're turning the corner there. Who knows?
Yeah, it's one of those parts of the game that's just sort of overlooked a lot of times unless something goes wrong. And for something to go that right, I mean, you could argue that the onside kick was bigger than anything else that happened in terms of the swing of the game because they hadn't really slowed Tampa down. Tampa moved the ball fairly well all day, and to just steal a possession away at a crucial point, and to then get back within 1 score was enormous.
Gutsy call, great execution.
Yeah, and it's a within the moment. I don't know if that was. Well, I'm sure we'll find out a little more this week. Was that a read? Was that an option that was available to them? Was it a straight call? Was it you look and you see if there's only 3 guys as there were, and everybody's falling back from that 10-yard mark that you have to get to. Sometimes kickers will have the option to execute a trick play, whether it's a fake punt, whatever it is. It's a read based on what the defense gives you, and it'll be interesting to see if that was the situation.
Before we wrap up, can we talk for a second about the death of Flip Saunders, who I think folks knew that he was battling a significant health challenge, but his death over the weekend still coming is a real surprise and a real source of sadness.
Yeah, well, just the circumstances, he was diagnosed, and everybody knew that he was sick, but he was supposed to come back and coach this year. I mean, it was in the plans. It was from Minnesota. It was announced that he was going to come back, and then Friday, kind of out of the blue, suddenly they announced, well, he wasn't going to come back, and I think that kind of caught people off guard because teams don't just do that. You don't do that unless you're sure that something's really wrong. Mm-hmm. People here probably just know him for his time with the Wizards, but he's probably best known in the league for his tutelage of Kevin Garnett, which you really have to understand where the league kind of was at that point. This is before we had our rules of having to go to college for a year and all that. There were kids jumping out of high school, and it was sort of that first wave of kids coming out of high school and going straight to the NBA. And you don't know most of those kids because most of them didn't make it. Most of them did not have a successful career. Kevin Garnett was one of the few, and he has really attributed a lot of his own ability to, go from being a high school kid to being thrown straight into the fray as a starting player in a professional sports league where you're traveling all around the country. You have more money than you ever knew what to do with.
Because of
Flip Saunders as a real mentor and somebody who really helped him along the way.
Noah Frank at WTOP.com. Thanks so much for being with us on this Monday after. Good having you here as always.
Sure.
We'll step aside, back with a program note after this.